The lobster was still steaming when I heard her say it. Not to me. Of course not. She was 2 tables over, clinking a glass of white wine with people who'd never pronounced my last name correctly. The company dinner had barely made it past the 2nd course, and already my appetite had curled up and died somewhere under the linen napkin on my lap. I wasn't supposed to be seated this far. They ran out of space at her table. That's what Celeste told me with a shrug, like it wasn't a choice. Like I hadn't been placed in the overflow section with the spouses who were just there for the free food and polite applause. I had just lifted my fork when I heard her voice, louder than it needed to be, the tone she uses when she wants to be overheard. Honestly, I don't even know why I married him. He was my biggest mistake. We all have one, right? There was laughter. The fake kind. The kind that people do when they're not sure if it's okay to laugh, but they do it anyway because silence would be worse. My fork never made it to my mouth. I just sat there staring at the lobster tail like it had personally betrayed me. My palms started sweating. The room suddenly felt like it had narrowed, as if the chandeliers were leaning in to listen. She didn't know I was close enough to hear. That part was clear. I was the husband she filed under safe, the man she expected to sit quietly and pretend to not notice things. But I noticed. I noticed how she leaned into the man beside her, the same one she said was just funny and new to the team. I noticed how she didn't wear the necklace I gave her for our anniversary. I noticed how she hadn't looked at me all night, not once. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a scene. I didn't even blink. I just sat there with my hands in my lap while the butter congealed and the world shifted. 1 hour. That's how long it took. 1 hour from the moment she dropped that line like a wine stain on a white tablecloth to the moment her entire evening came undone. And I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even finish my drink. All I did was stand up, and everything changed. The thing that stuck with me most wasn't what she said, it was how easily she laughed after saying it. Like there was no weight in those words. Like I was a pothole in her timeline, something she could joke about in a dimly lit ballroom with people who barely knew me. I sat in that cheap upholstered chair with my hands folded in my lap, staring blankly at the flickering candle between me and some bored accountant's wife who kept scrolling her phone under the tablecloth. I heard the clinking of glasses, the dull hum of fake compliments being exchanged, and in the middle of it all, her. Celeste always knew how to own a room. She didn't just enter a space, she occupied it. She was radiant in that silver dress, the one she bought on sale last month, though she never tells me how much the card bill actually comes to. I watched her from my corner of irrelevance, watched the way her hand brushed the arm of the guy next to her, the way her head tilted just a little too far when she laughed. I wanted to believe I was imagining it. I wanted to chalk it up to a few too many drinks or workplace camaraderie. But deep down, I knew. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a while. It's strange how fast humiliation can settle into your bloodstream. I wasn't angry, at least not yet. I felt embarrassed. Small. Like I was the only one in the room who hadn't gotten the memo. I thought about leaving, just quietly sliding out before dessert and calling an Uber, but something made me stay. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was something uglier, that hollow need to see it through, even if it meant watching her pretend I didn't matter. I got up and walked toward the balcony. Not to make a scene, just to breathe. The air outside was cool, not cold, and the city looked like something painted on glass. I leaned on the railing and wondered how many other people had stood right there, realizing their lives weren't what they thought they were. There was a potted plant beside me with cigarette butts tucked deep in the soil. Someone had stubbed out the truth in there, and suddenly I felt like doing the same. About 10 minutes passed before I saw her silhouette approaching through the glass. She didn't notice me, too focused on her reflection in the dark window. She reapplied her lipstick, checked her teeth, adjusted the neckline of her dress. I stayed in the shadows, just watching. That's when he followed her out, the man in the maroon suit. I still didn't know his name, and somehow that made it worse. He stood beside her, too close. She smiled again, and that smile, that damn smile. It wasn't meant for me anymore. It was light, effortless, and real. I hadn't seen her smile like that in years. And that broke something in me. Not with a bang, more like a thread being pulled from a sweater. Silent. Slow. Permanent. They didn't kiss. Nothing dramatic happened. But the way they stood there, bodies tilted, voices lowered, it was intimate in a way that made me feel like I'd already been erased. And maybe I had. I turned away before they saw me. Walked slowly back through the ballroom. Past strangers who'd eaten more of the expensive dinner than I had. Past centerpieces and dessert trays and servers collecting plates I never touched. I reached our table and sat down. No one noticed I'd been gone. The accountant's wife was still scrolling. The music had changed. Celeste came back about 10 minutes later, her cheeks slightly flushed. She kissed me on the forehead, the way you'd kiss a child, and asked, "You okay?" I nodded, said I had a bit of a headache. She smiled politely. "Want to go?" "Not yet," I told her. "Let's stay for dessert." Because what she didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was that something had shifted in me. A decision had formed. Quiet, clean, and final. If I was her biggest mistake, she was about to find out what it felt like to lose something you never thought you'd have to miss. I sat there as the dessert was brought out. A miniature forest of chocolate mousse, vanilla tuile, and some gold-dusted nonsense that probably cost more than my entire week's lunches. Celeste was scrolling through photos on her phone, laughing with the coworker next to her, probably showing off some filtered snapshots from their team-building trip the week before. She hadn't asked me to go, of course. Said it was employees only. I believed her. Back then, I poked at the mousse with my spoon, but didn't taste a thing. My mind was elsewhere. It had shifted into this strange, detached state, like I was watching the evening play out from behind a one-way mirror. The humiliation still burned inside me, but now it was changing shape. It wasn't self-pity anymore. It was calculation. And something colder. I remembered a detail. A small one, but it clicked into place like a gear engaging in an old clock. Earlier that evening, Celeste had left her phone face up on the table while she fetched wine. A notification had popped up. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize. Marcel clinking glasses and a preview of a message that read, "You look incredible. I'm trying not to stare too much tonight." When she came back, she flipped the phone over without even glancing at it. Like it was muscle memory. Like she knew exactly what she was hiding. I had no proof, no confrontation, no smoking gun. But I had something else. I had her words, burned into my brain. He was my biggest mistake. And now, I had a plan. The company's CEO, some overconfident tech guy in a velvet bow tie, clinked his glass and called for a few words to mark the end of the fiscal year or whatever celebration justified this grotesque display. A few department heads spoke. Celeste actually went up for a moment too, introducing the marketing team with a voice like champagne, bubbly and hollow. She was thriving, smiling, soaking up the polite applause. I applauded too, just enough to keep up appearances. Then the mic passed to our table. The MC made a joke. "Any spouses here want to say something?" "Marvin, right?" He grinned in my direction. Celeste let out a forced little laugh and waved it off, but the mic was already in someone's hand, being passed to me. I didn't stand up. I didn't clear my throat. I just took the mic and turned slightly in my chair. And then I began. "I wasn't planning on speaking tonight," I said, voice even, maybe too even. But I figured, hey, why not? You've all made me feel so incredibly welcome this evening. People laughed. A few polite chuckles from nearby tables. Celeste shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I just want to say how proud I am of Celeste. She's come such a long way since we met. Back then she was fresh out of grad school, unsure of everything, except one thing, that she wanted a future with someone stable, someone she could build with, someone she didn't have to impress." My eyes met hers. Her smile was frozen now, still present, but stretched thin, like a mask with fraying strings. And I've always tried to be that man. Steady, safe, maybe boring, but I thought I mattered. Until tonight. The room fell quiet. Utensils stopped clinking. Even the servers paused. Tonight, I learned something about my wife. Something I'm not going to forget. And neither will she. I handed the mic back, stood up, buttoned my blazer, and walked away from the table before anyone could say a word. The silence behind me was deafening. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could already feel the heat of her confusion, the slow realization spreading through the group like a dropped glass of wine on white linen. Outside, I didn't light a cigarette. I don't smoke. I just stood under the awning and took a deep breath of cold air. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. Not yet. Not until she came out. And she would come out. Because what I'd just done wasn't the end. It was the first crack in the foundation. And I wasn't finished. It didn't take long. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe less. The sound of the ballroom doors opening behind me was soft, but distinct enough to break through the buzz of city traffic and my own spiraling thoughts. I didn't turn around. I could feel her presence without seeing her. Celeste had a way of entering a space like she owned it, even when it was falling apart. "Marvin," she said, her voice tight, controlled. She was still performing. For herself, for me, for anyone who might be watching from the windows. I kept my eyes on the skyline. Had a nice chat in there. She stepped closer. What the hell was that supposed to be? Are you trying to humiliate me? I slowly turned my head and looked at her. For the first time in a very long while, I let myself really see her. Not the curated version she showed to the world, but the woman behind it. Her jaw was clenched. The little crease between her brows was back, the one she got when she was nervous but pretending not to be. And her eyes, they weren't angry yet. Not truly. They were calculating. Assessing the damage. I just said a few words. I replied, my voice quiet. Like everyone else. Don't play games with me, Marvin, she hissed. You embarrass me in front of everyone. No, I said, stepping a little closer. You did that part yourself. There was a pause, a flicker of confusion. She didn't expect me to bite back. I never had before. I'd always been the peacemaker. The quiet one. The man who let things slide for the sake of keeping the boat steady. But tonight, I had stepped out of that role. And she didn't like it. You heard something, she said, eyes narrowing. Didn't you? I tilted my head. Why don't you tell me what you think I heard? Silence. Just for a beat. Then she folded her arms and let out a bitter laugh. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said, dismissively. People joke. I had a couple glasses of wine. You always overanalyze everything. You called me your biggest mistake, I said. The words landed like lead between us. That wasn't a joke. That was the truth. Your truth. Her expression cracked, just slightly. A muscle in her cheek twitched. She looked over her shoulder, maybe checking if anyone was near enough to hear. There wasn't. Just us, the cold air, and the echo of what couldn't be unsaid. I didn't mean it like that, she muttered. Softer now. It was just something dumb. Office gossip. Do you love him? I asked. That stopped her. She didn't ask who. She didn't pretend not to understand. Her eyes didn't widen with confusion or outrage. She just stood there, still, like a statue of her former self, trying to find an answer that wouldn't make it worse. But she never gave one. I see, I said, taking a slow breath. You're being dramatic, she finally whispered. You always do this. You twist things. You make everything about you. Maybe that's the real reason. She stopped herself. My mouth went dry. Go ahead, I said. Finish that sentence. She didn't. Couldn't. And in that silence, everything between us shifted. Not with a scream. Not with some big, teary breakdown. Just a quiet death of something that used to feel like love. I took out my phone. Opened the email I had drafted while she was toasting her coworkers. Hit send. It went to my lawyer. Not hers. What did you just do? She asked, sensing the change. I looked her in the eye and said, started something that should have happened a long time ago. Then I turned and walked down the steps, past the valet, past the people still mingling inside, past the life I thought I was part of. I wasn't sure where I was going yet, but I knew I couldn't stand still anymore. Behind me, her voice called out my name once. Just once. And it didn't sound like a wife calling for her husband. It sounded like someone who finally realized the ground was starting to crack. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch not because we fought, not because I was kicked out of the bedroom, but because I chose to. The bed had become something symbolic. A stage. A lie covered in soft sheets and decorative pillows we hadn't touched in months. I stared at the ceiling for hours, replaying the company dinner like it was stuck on a loop I couldn't shut off. Every word. Every glance. Every fake smile she gave to everyone else while quietly burying me beneath her ambition. Celeste didn't come home right away. She texted, I'm staying late to clear the air with the team. The same team that clapped when she toasted her department. The same people who heard her call me a mistake and laughed like it was comedy hour. I knew what she was really doing, and more importantly, who she was doing it with. Around 2 a.m., she finally walked through the door. I didn't get up. I didn't speak. She tiptoed around like a teenager sneaking in after curfew. But I wasn't her father. I was the man she married, and apparently forgot she had. She didn't try to talk. She didn't explain. She just disappeared into the bedroom and locked the door. That was her answer. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I took a personal day, told my supervisor I wasn't feeling well. Which wasn't a lie. There's a kind of sickness that doesn't show up on thermometers. The kind that grows in the silence between two people who used to love each other. By noon, I had done something I never thought I would. I called her mother. Susan and I hadn't spoken much in the past year. Celeste always managed the communication, filtered everything through her own version of events. But I needed to talk to someone who knew her before the layers of marketing polish were applied. Susan was blunt and tired, and, to my surprise, not shocked. She's always been that way, she said flatly. Everything's disposable to her, Marvin. She learned that from her father. Charm them, use them, discard them when they stop feeding her spotlight. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe some denial, some defense of her daughter. But Susan sounded more defeated than anything else. I warned you, she added. I told you during your honeymoon. She gets bored easily. That word again. Bored. Like I was a worn-out toy that came free in a cereal box. But the most shocking part came just after, when Susan hesitated, then said, "You should check her work calendar." That's all I'll say. That afternoon, I did. I knew Celeste's passwords. Not because I snooped, because she gave them to me once, during a moment of false intimacy when she needed help syncing her devices. She never changed them. She probably never thought I'd care enough to look. Her calendar was pristine, color-coded, carefully labeled. Every client meeting, campaign deadline, and product launch was accounted for. And then, 3 days next month, right in the middle of the work week, blocked off and labeled only, Wellness Retreat, New York. It wasn't a company event. I called the HR line anonymously and asked if they were sending employees out for anything health-related. They weren't. Then I checked the email she'd left open on her desktop by accident 2 nights before. I remembered the subject line. Tickets confirmed. Just us. Finally, it was from Marcel Clinking Glasses, the same contact who'd messaged her during the dinner. Except now, I noticed the full address. It wasn't a coworker. It was her old college professor. The same one she once called intense but harmless. A man 20 years older, with a reputation for boundary-blurring relationships. She used to laugh about his flirtations. I guess now she found them thrilling instead of ridiculous. I sat in that chair for what felt like an hour, just staring at the screen, rereading the itinerary. They weren't going on a retreat. They were going to a boutique hotel in upstate New York. Couples massages, wine tastings, a room with a fireplace and a balcony view. I didn't cry. I laughed. Not the healthy kind. The kind that sounds hollow, like wind passing through an abandoned room. My hands trembled as I clicked through the details, my chest heavy with the kind of realization that changes how you see everything that came before. All those nights, she stayed late. All the excuses about working through burnout. All the quiet disdain in her voice when I asked if she needed help with anything. It wasn't just that she had checked out of our marriage. It's that she had been rewriting the narrative behind my back for months, positioning me as the pathetic husband who didn't get it. The man she could abandon without guilt because he never inspired her to stay. She didn't know what I knew now, but she would, because I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was planning a mirror, one that would show her, in front of everyone, exactly what kind of person she had become. And I had 6 days to build it. I spent the next 3 days preparing for something that looked nothing like revenge. It wasn't anger that fueled me. It was clarity. There's a strange calm that settles in once you realize something is truly over. Not broken, not struggling, but done. Like an echo that finally fades after bouncing around the walls too long. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I just wanted her to see it. Really see it. The full reflection. I made calls, not to friends, because I didn't really have many left. Celeste had been the social one, the party thrower, the calendar keeper. I'd been her accessory, the guy with the quiet laugh and the tired eyes. But I did call Susan again. I told her what I'd found. About the wellness retreat, the professor, the hotel. I expected her to gasp or deny, or at least hesitate. But she sighed and said, "You need to show her. Not for her, for you." So I did. I reached out to one of Celeste's coworkers, not from marketing, but from accounting. Tracy, a woman Celeste had once referred to as gray wallpaper with a pulse. Which, honestly, was her way of describing anyone who wasn't useful. Tracy had always been kind to me at events. Asked real questions. She once helped me find a taxi after a rainy fundraiser when Celeste ditched me mid-evening. I told Tracy I needed help. I didn't give her details. Just asked if she could let me know when Celeste's next big meeting was, something with upper management or out-of-town clients. Something public. Turns out, Celeste had scheduled a strategy presentation for Thursday morning. In the glass conference room. The one that overlooked the main office floor. The one they used when they wanted to impress investors. Perfect. That morning, I dressed with intention. Slacks, button-down shirt, clean shave. The kind of effort I used to make before I started shrinking under the weight of her indifference. I arrived at her office 15 minutes before the meeting, holding a slim envelope and a look that probably didn't match the Marvin she remembered. Tracy met me in the lobby and said nothing, just handed me a visitor's badge and motioned toward the stairs. I didn't need direction. I knew where that room was. I'd helped Celeste rehearse presentations for it in our living room, back when she still asked for my opinion. I waited outside the glass doors until the room was almost full. She was at the head of the table, laughing, gesturing toward a pie chart on the screen. Confident, polished, untouchable. I stepped inside without knocking. Silence. All at once. She saw me and smiled out of reflex. Then confusion. Then that smile vanished like smoke in a wind tunnel. "Marvin," she said, faltering for the first time in a long time. "I won't be long," I said to the room. "Apologies for the interruption. This'll only take a moment." I walked up to her, placed the envelope on the table in front of her, and tapped it gently. "Inside," I said quietly, "is the reservation confirmation. The emails. The calendar screenshots. Everything you planned for next week." She didn't move. "You left your laptop open," I added. "Or maybe you wanted me to find it." Either way, I did. One of the executives cleared his throat, uncomfortable. A woman reached for her coffee cup and paused midair. "This isn't the place, Marvin," Celeste said, her voice like glass sharp, trying not to crack. "No," I agreed, taking a step back. "But you made the mess here. I'm just returning what's yours." I turned and left before anyone could stop me. The silence behind me was deafening. The kind that doesn't come from shock, but from shame. By the time I reached the ground floor, my phone buzzed. "Celeste." I didn't answer. She texted, "We need to talk. Please." I muted her number. That evening, I moved out. Not dramatically. No yelling. No suitcases hurled downstairs. I'd already packed what I needed earlier in the week and left the keys on the hallway table with a note that read, "This was never about him. It was about how invisible you made me feel." I checked into a modest Airbnb on the edge of town. Quiet, with a window that overlooked trees instead of traffic. For the first time in years, I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel like I was auditioning for someone else's life. And the real twist? She didn't show up at the hotel with him. She canceled the trip. But by then, it didn't matter. Because some endings aren't about who walks away. They're about who finally learns to stop standing still. The thing no one tells you about walking away is that the silence afterward doesn't feel victorious. It's not a dramatic movie ending with sweeping music and a slow fade to black. It's quieter than that. Hollow, even. Like stepping out of a burning house and realizing the smoke still follows you long after you're safe. That was my first week in the Airbnb. Days melted together like wax. I couldn't tell if I was numb or finally at peace. Maybe both. Celeste didn't come after me. Not physically, anyway. She sent texts. Dozens. At first, they were sharp. "You humiliated me." Then defensive. "You don't know the whole story." Then softer, manipulative. "We owe each other a conversation." Eventually, they turned desperate. "I miss you." I didn't realize what I had. But I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because I had nothing left to say. You can't build anything from the ashes of a lie unless both people are willing to hold the truth in their hands, and she never was. The real surprise came from her company. Tracy texted me a few days later, something I didn't expect. "Just so you know, she's been placed on leave." Apparently, after I left that meeting room, chaos followed. The VP of HR had been in the room. So was someone from the legal team. They didn't care about the affair. That wasn't the problem. It was the breach of professionalism, the poor judgment, the optics. Celeste's entire brand was built on composure, vision, and reputation. And I had shattered the illusion with one envelope and a few well-timed words. I didn't celebrate. That wasn't the point. But it did confirm something. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined the dismissal, the loneliness, the way she quietly pushed me to the edge of our shared life until I was just clinging to it by routine. I finally let go. And she fell with me. But not everyone fell quietly. 2 nights later, she showed up at my Airbnb. I knew it was her before I opened the door. The knock was too frantic to be anything else. I hesitated. I could have ignored it. But I opened it anyway. She looked awful. Not in the superficial sense. Her hair was still perfect. Her clothes still polished. But her face, it looked unfamiliar. Swollen eyes. Trembling lip. Panic disguised as composure. "Marvin," she said, trying to control her breath, "can I come in?" I stepped aside, wordless. She walked in slowly, scanning the room like she expected to find someone else here. I think that's what scared her most, The idea that I had already moved on, that I had found something better, someone better, faster than she had expected. There's no one else, I said, reading her mind. She sat down on the arm of the chair, wringing her hands. I'm not here to argue, she said. I didn't think you'd actually walk away. That struck something in me. I didn't even hide the hurt in my voice when I replied, that's the problem, Celeste. You never thought I could. She blinked, stunned. You were always there. Always waiting. Always. Marvin. I nodded. Yeah, I was. Until I realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. She looked down. It wasn't just Marcel. I wasn't even sure if it was going to happen. I was bored. I was scared. I wanted to feel something again. And you thought betraying me would do that? I asked. Was I really that invisible to you? She started crying. Not loud, messy sobs. Just silent tears that made her mascara bleed slightly at the corners. She didn't try to wipe them. Maybe she thought the show of sadness would sway me. You weren't invisible, she whispered. You were constant. That's what scared me. I felt like I didn't deserve it. That's the part you finally got right, I said quietly. You didn't. There was a long pause. She looked around the room again, the plain kitchen, the second-hand couch, the dented coffee table. You could come home. We could fix it. We could try counseling. I'll quit the job. I'll block his number. I'll do whatever it. No, I interrupted. The word wasn't cruel. It was simple. Final. Her lips parted, like she couldn't believe I'd turned her down. Like she still thought she had the power to negotiate my heart. I'm not doing this because I hate you, I said. I'm doing it because I finally love myself enough not to beg anymore. She sat there for another minute, maybe waiting for me to change my mind, maybe trying to understand who this new Marvin was. But I was done explaining. She stood up slowly, walked to the door, and turned back one last time. I never thought it would be you who walked away, she said. And I replied, that's because you never bothered to look at me long enough to see who I really was. She left, and this time, I didn't follow. The door clicked shut behind her, and the stillness that followed was unlike any I'd felt before. It wasn't heavy. It didn't ache. It was clean, like the first breath after a storm, when everything around you is drenched and wrecked, but the air finally feels honest. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not the next. Something had shifted too far for tears. And maybe that's what healing really feels like, not a triumphant anthem, but a quiet reclamation of your own voice. After years of feeling small, I had finally chosen myself. Not out of spite, not out of ego, but because I was tired of apologizing for simply wanting to matter. A few weeks passed. I didn't hear from her again. Not directly. A mutual acquaintance told me she resigned from her job before they made the decision for her. Apparently, she moved out of our old apartment and into a studio closer to downtown. No more weekend retreats. No more dinner parties. The spotlight had dimmed. She was learning what it meant to be without an audience. As for me, I started over. I didn't rush anything. I wasn't interested in dating or distractions. I focused on small things, things that brought me back to myself. I started going on walks every morning, no destination in mind, just movement. I bought a notebook and scribbled down thoughts, not for anyone else, just for clarity. I called my sister, who I hadn't spoken to in months. We laughed more in one phone call than I had in the last 2 years of my marriage. I even joined a community volunteer group, helping with warehouse logistics for a food drive. Nothing fancy. Just boxes, inventory, coordination. But I met people. Real people. One of them, a woman named Renee, worked with a local shelter. She had this way of smiling like she meant it, asking questions that weren't just polite but personal. She never asked if I was married. Never assumed anything. She just saw me. A few weeks later, she invited me to a small dinner with some friends. It wasn't a company gala. No heels, no catered lobsters, no marketing buzzwords. Just mismatched plates, too much pasta, and warm laughter in a house with creaky floors. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was performing. I wasn't someone's plus one or shadow or mistake. I was just Marvin. And that was enough. Celeste was a chapter. A loud, bright, messy chapter filled with lessons I didn't ask for but desperately needed. And while her ending was jagged and painful, it gave birth to something far more valuable, my beginning. Not the version of me she sculpted and edited and silenced. The real one. So yes, I heard her say I was her biggest mistake. But walking away, that became the smartest thing I've ever done. And maybe, just maybe, The best decision of my life was realizing that love should never require you to disappear. Not even quietly. Not even politely. Just never again. The end.